Imagine stepping into the shadowed halls of the Forbidden City, where silk curtains whisper secrets and the air is thick with the scent of incense and forbidden desire. What if I told you that for over 2,000 years, China's emperors didn't just surround themselves with thousands of female concubines. They also kept young men as personal companions, lovers, and sometimes even political powerhouses. These weren't eunuchs or mere servants. They were called nanchong, male favorites, beautiful, trained, and utterly dependent on the emperor's whim. History tried to erase them, scrubbing their names from official records, downplaying their influence, and rewriting the past to fit a more proper Confucian image of straight-laced imperial virtue. But the disturbing truth refuses to stay buried. Today, we're pulling back the veil on the horrifying lives of these male concubines in ancient China, the ones who rose like meteors and fell like stones, their stories of power, passion, betrayal, and erasure that dynasties desperately wanted you to forget. Let's rewind to the Han Dynasty, around 200 BC to 200 AD, when these relationships weren't just tolerated. They were openly documented and sometimes celebrated among the elite. The great historian Sima Qian, in his Records of the Grand Historian, even dedicated an entire chapter to the biographies of the emperor's male favorites. He wrote bluntly, "It wasn't just women who could catch a ruler's eye. Courtiers and young men could play that game too. Out of the first 13 emperors of the Western Han, at least 10 had well-known male companions. These weren't hidden scandals. They were part of court life, blending intimacy with politics in ways that could make or break dynasties. But make no mistake, this wasn't some romantic fairy tale. These young men were often plucked from humble or desperate backgrounds, elevated overnight, and then discarded when the emperor's fancy shifted. Take Deng Tong, the boatman who became one of the richest men in China under Emperor Wen. Legend has it the emperor dreamed of a handsome man who helped him cross a river in a boat. When he met Deng, a lowly ferryman who matched the dream, the attraction was instant. Deng wasn't just a lover. He became a confidant, sharing the emperor's bed and ear. To keep him close and wealthy, Emperor Wen granted Deng a monopoly on minting coins. Imagine that, a former nobody printing the empire's money, amassing a fortune that rivaled the state's. But here's the dark twist that shows how fragile this power was. When Emperor Wen died, his successor stripped Deng of everything. No more favors, no protection. Deng ended up begging on the streets, starving to death in poverty. One day a palace favorite, the next a forgotten pauper. That's the brutal reality these male concubines faced. Their entire world hinged on one man's affection, and when that vanished, so did they. But no story captures the passion, the privilege, and the peril quite like that of Emperor Ai and his beloved Dong Xian in the late Western Han. Emperor Ai, ruling from 7 to 1 BC, was so devoted to this young man that he openly neglected his female concubines and even tried to name Dong as his heir, a move that shocked the court and nearly toppled the dynasty. Dong started as a minor official, just a face in the crowd, but his charm and looks won the emperor's heart completely. They slept together on the same mat, shared baths, and Dong was showered with gifts fit for a consort, jewels, weapons, even a lavish mansion built right outside the palace. His sister was elevated to imperial consort, his father got a high ministerial post, and his wife was allowed to live inside the palace walls. Dong rose to commander of the armed forces, one of the 3 highest positions in the empire, all before he turned 23. He didn't earn it through battles or wisdom. It was pure favoritism, the kind that bred jealousy and whispers among the eunuchs and female concubines who saw their own influence slipping away. The most famous moment? The one that gave China its ancient idiom for same-sex love, the passion of the cut sleeve. One afternoon, the emperor and Dong Xian dozed off together after a long day. Dong's head rested on the emperor's wide silk sleeve. When Emperor Ai woke and needed to rise for court, he didn't want to disturb his sleeping lover. Instead of shaking him awake, he quietly drew a knife and sliced off his own sleeve. That tender act, choosing not to wake his beloved over royal duty, became legendary. But tenderness in the palace was a double-edged sword. Dong's power made enemies everywhere. Officials who opposed his promotions were imprisoned, demoted, or forced to suicide. The court seethed with resentment. When Emperor Ai suddenly died at just 24, with no clear heir, the backlash was swift and merciless. The Grand Empress Dowager seized control, stripped Dong of his titles, and barred him from the palace. Dong and his wife, realizing the game was over, killed themselves that very night. Their bodies were hastily buried, the family exiled to the remote south, and their wealth confiscated. Wang Mang, the new power behind the throne, even had Dong's tomb dug up and reburied like a criminal's. In the end, Dong's story wasn't just love. It was a warning. Male favorites could wield godlike influence for a moment, but they lived on borrowed time, their legacies erased to protect the empire's image. This wasn't isolated to one emperor or even one dynasty. Across the Han, emperors like Gaozu had his pretty boy Jiru. Emperor Wu kept Han Yen as a constant companion who slept and rose with him every day, and the list goes on. These men weren't always passive lovers. Some advised on state matters, commanded troops, or influenced policy. But the system was rigged against them. Unlike female concubines, who had a formal ranking in the harem and could bear heirs to secure their position, male favorites operated in a gray zone. There was no official title of male consort in the imperial records. That would have been too explicit for later historians. Instead, they were elevated through vague roles like imperial attendant or director of this or that, their real power whispered behind closed doors. Young boys from poor families were sometimes purchased or scouted for their looks, trained in etiquette, music, and seduction, much like their female counterparts. In elite households beyond the palace, wealthy merchants and officials did the same, keeping male concubines as status symbols or secret pleasures. Historical texts from the Ming and Qing dynasties hint at singing boys and xianggong in private brothels, effeminate young men trained from childhood in the arts of pleasure, their identities molded until they became living dolls for the powerful. By the later dynasties, attitudes hardened. Neo-Confucian ideals pushed family, procreation, and moral restraint, making open male favorites riskier. The Song dynasty was the last to openly include chapters on them in official histories. In the Ming and Qing, it went underground. Enter He Shen, the infamous favorite of Emperor Qianlong in the 18th century. Orphaned young, He Shen started as a lowly palace guard, but his striking looks, rumored to resemble a concubine the emperor had loved and lost in his youth, caught Qianlong's eye immediately. The emperor promoted him relentlessly. Minister of Revenue, Grand Counselor, even marrying his daughter to He Shen's son to bind their families. He Shen amassed a fortune worth more than 10 years of national revenue, owning mansions, operas, and boy lovers of his own, while the empire groaned under corruption. But when Qianlong died in 1799, the new emperor wasted no time. He Shen was charged with treasonous excess, stripped of everything, and forced to commit suicide at 49. His vast wealth was seized, his legacy branded as the ultimate corrupt official. Again, the pattern. Rise on the emperor's desire, fall in the silence after his death. Historians later portrayed He Shen as a greedy villain, conveniently omitting the personal bond that fueled his ascent. What made this world so disturbing wasn't just the intimacy. It was the total erasure of these men's humanity. Many arrived as teenagers, their families sometimes selling them in times of famine or debt, hoping for a better life that rarely came. They lived in luxury one day, but faced starvation, exile, or execution the next. Palace intrigue meant constant danger from jealous eunuchs, rival concubines, and scheming officials. When favor faded, there was no pension, no honorable retirement, just oblivion. And history's cover-up? Dynasties rewrote the records to emphasize heterosexual heirs and Confucian virtue. Sima Qian's bold chapter became a rare exception. Later chroniclers glossed over these relationships or framed them as mere friendships. Foreign accounts and underground literature preserved fragments, but official China wanted the world to believe emperors were models of moral straightness. Even today, some textbooks downplay it, as if acknowledging male concubines would tarnish the grandeur of imperial China. Yet these stories reveal something raw about power. How desire can topple thrones, how vulnerability hides behind golden thrones, and how the powerless, whether female concubines or male favorites, were pawns in a deadly game. The male concubines of ancient China weren't footnotes. They were central to the empire's hidden heart, their lives a testament to beauty's double edge and loyalty's fragility. History tried to erase them, but fragments remain, in idioms like cut sleeve, in scattered biographies, in the ruins of forgotten palaces. If this glimpse into the forbidden past shocked you, hit that like button, subscribe for more untold histories that the textbooks ignored, and drop a comment. Which emperor's story surprised you most? The truth about China's past isn't always pretty, but it's always worth uncovering. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, the silk screens of history hide more than they reveal.